Hall's Tree Service. Hall's Tree Service has been locally owned and operated for over 40 years. Look, there is no job too small, no tree too tall. You can call Hall's, and Larry and his crew are guaranteed to work hard for you. That's 316-772-1919. That's a 316-772-1919. Call Hall's. Well, hello, everybody, and hello, Chad. How was your week this week, Chad? Or should I say the last month been for you, my friend?
There was a month. It's been so hot and hectic. I can't even keep track anymore.
Well, so how was your week then?
Week's been okay. It's been busy, but it's been okay.
Yeah. I'm enjoying the nicer weather. I've spent this opportunity to paint much more of my house, so it's not so tri-colored anymore. It's moving along.
Yeah, I got some trim I need to go get out and get done, and so got to wait for that next 70-degree day. But
well, I tell you, for anybody that watches the program, I would like to have Chad on every week. I tell him this. Hopefully in the future we'll be able to get him on more. When I'm going through and I'm reading the paper and I'm talking about the stuff on a weekly basis with the Talks with Sissy, it's like, man, I just wish I had Chad here to talk to me about this stuff. And or I want to talk to Chad, and then by the time, we've got 8 to 12 papers read, it's like, well, what do we talk about? But something that we were talking about just briefly right before the program was some of the things that are happening at Newton High School. I know that well, when we get into political time, everybody starts talking politics and it gets a little bit hectic and the whole thing and everything else in between. And in the end, once elections are done, we move on, and hopefully people will get a little less negative. I mean, if you want to look at it that way. And one thing that I was just really excited about was some of the things that are going on at the Newton High School. And I want you to tell me about it. The article hasn't come out yet. We're doing it. So this is, you'll have opportunity to read the article by the time you watch the program, I'm sure. But it kind of runs hand in hand, and I'm really excited about it because of my own personal experience with CTE program, Brooks Trade Center. So give it to me, Chad.
So this is a decision that came in the latter third of a fairly lengthy board meeting on Tuesday, and so if those that are not up to date, it's okay. I mean, seriously, that's why I sit through the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
So they are going to launch a electrical pathway in the CTE program out at Newton High School, and this is something that, it really sounds mundane, but man, this is exciting.
Yeah.
It is. This is so cool, and it's really cool on a number of levels. One level is the partnerships that were created or were existing already that allowed for this to happen, because this is going to take work by Hutch Community College. This took some input and some work from the Harvey County Economic Development Council, and most importantly, in my opinion, in all of this, Kansas Electric was a big player in making this happen. And in a nutshell, next year is when classes are going to get started, and the idea is that through a 2-year grouping of courses in the CTE program, when a senior graduates from that school and that program, they'll be a certified electrician.
So like they'll have their journeyman, basically, the first step in being able to get the academics for that.
And what that equates to is that we're going to produce, and who knows how many, but we're going to produce kids out of our high school that are immediately employable. Immediately.
Yeah.
I haven't talked to anybody over at Kansas Electric. I'm pretty sure that that's part of their motivation. It's like, they're like everybody else right now.
Yeah. They need people.
Everybody needs people.
Yeah.
And you're like, where are they? And nobody seems to know. These guys were like, well, we're going to create them.
Yeah.
And I, freaking genius.
Yeah. Well,
and they actually added 2 different certification programs on Tuesday night. One of it is in the medical field, and they already have a CNA program.
Yes.
So you can graduate with your
certified nurse's aid.
Thank you,
Yep.
certified nurse's aid, and I mean you're immediately employable, and you're immediately employable for a job that is not a minimum wage job.
Yeah.
And if you want to go on and do more, you can.
Yeah.
But you can also take a break from all of that and go get some cash in your pocket. I think of all people, because she and I have had differences over the last year and a half. Mallory Morton hit the nail on the head with a sledgehammer, and she's like, these kids are going to be able to go into the career world with no debt.
Yeah.
How awesome is that? And that is so freaking incredible.
Yeah. And then and I don't know, just speaking very highly of the Brooks Trade Center, I went through that 20 years ago.
Yeah.
As an adult, returning adult to college. And so they offer that as well for people that are wanting to get an associate's degree through Hutchinson Community College. There's a pathway for that. I picked the profession of welding. My son's currently doing the CNC machining. I've heard nothing but absolute great reviews out of that. I mean, AGCO, Excel, or I guess Black & Decker now, that's who it is.
Yep, that's Black & Decker.
All of these individual entities, Mo Ridge, they're all looking for, educated, capable people to do the trade in which, well, if you think it's bad trying to find people to do just your basic job, right, that just requires labor nowadays, imagine what it's like to find an educated person. And we're in an area where, we need trades, even if you're not talking about locally and can't find a job locally, let's say, which is impossible, if you have a trade, that then you can go to another community and be just as likely to have it.
Right. And, my son's in the 8th grade this year, my oldest. And recently he asked me, what I thought about him taking a look at some of the programs out at the CTE. And what prompted that was he had heard that he could be a certified welder by the time he graduated. And he also has a little bit of interest maybe in being an auto mechanic. And again,
Very cool.
we got a great program out there for that.
Yep.
And I just looked at him and I said, I'm all for it. I mean, just straight up.
Yeah.
The day after you graduate, you can go get a job. And I'm good with that.
Yeah.
And he was like, well, and I said, no, let me be really blunt. Okay. If you decide, just because you can get the cert that you go through welding, for example.
Yeah.
When you graduate, you can go up to Heston, you can get yourself a job.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't have to go to Heston. Full Vision will take you too, but you can get a job without ever leaving this community, and you can make some decent money. And he goes, well, what do you mean? I said, depending on how tight they are, you could be making more than me.
Yeah. Well,
and I've got college education.
I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Anybody watched when we were there for the Harvey County parade? I walked around a large square baler that they had sitting there on display, and I commented the fact that I worked for AGCO for many, many years. I mean, like almost a decade, just shy of a decade, and they paid me well. I never had problems,
Right.
with, there were times where just like any factory, you're laid off here or there or whatever. But, I was gainfully employed and for many, many years and very happy there, so it's worth it. And another thing that we're talking about our kids and having this discussion with the CTE program is, when your child reaches a senior and they have that certification in, let's say, welding technology or whatever, because there's a partnership with Hutchinson Community College, they only have to go to school one more year to take their core required classes through Hutchinson Community College, and they have an associate's degree.
Right.
So if your student goes through one of these programs, whichever ones they are, and then they decide, hey, I want to have an associate's degree, I want to go on to do a 4-year degree at some point in time, then Well, 1 year after, you're already 1 year ahead of the game when it comes to your co-peers because they've still got another year to go before they get their associates. So it's really a highly beneficial.
Yeah,
highly
it's a great
beneficial
thing.
program. So yeah, Weldon, he wants to be a welder, huh?
Well, he really doesn't know. It's one of those things. And one of the things that I said to him, which is, in my opinion, very key, was, if you get out of school and you go get that job, whether wherever it is,
Yep.
and you get a year or 2 years in, and you're like, man, this is not what I wanted. This is not what I had envisioned for myself. You can go back to school.
Yeah.
And you can go get retrained, or you can do whatever you need to do. And if you are wise with what you have been given and earned, you'll be able to go back and not rack up hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt.
That's correct. Yes. Agreed. Totally agreed. Although I've done that.
Well, I mean, dude, if I had it to do all over again, I would have made some much different decisions back in that era, right? And I mean, you're looking at a guy who changed his college major 7 times in 2 years.
Yeah.
I didn't have a freaking clue what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
I had no idea. I had dreams of being a pilot, and then when I flew a plane, I was like, no, that ain't for me.
Yeah.
And it didn't take long for me to realize that, but now I'm locked in. Please consider my age. My first year, I paid $17,000 for my first semester of college.
Yeah.
Because I thought I wanted to be a pilot. Dude, that was an expensive lesson. Right? Nothing against Heston.
No.
I mean, I totally love you guys.
Yeah. Well,
but that's what it cost me. And
I'm not to go down this, but going down the education road, right? It's interesting. I knew labor wasn't going to cut it for me, so I wanted to get a trade. Got a trade. Did welding for 10 years, and I would suggest to your son, choose machining. I told my son, choose machining. Those guys have it so much easier. The people that do that, because welding's a brutal job. I mean,
yes, it is.
There's just anybody that's a welder, I got respect for you. I know what it's like. I did it for 10 years, 60 hours a week, 70 hours a week. I've been there. So, when it comes to people making decisions about their education, well, it took me to be an adult to really figure out what I wanted to do and then where I wanted to go. I had the opportunity to do it, so I did it, which is very uncommon for most people. But there is something about when I taught public speaking, a lot of college kids were in college. They knew they wanted to go to college, but they didn't know what they wanted to go for, or it changes so much. Mm-hmm. And then how many people actually, after they earn a degree, do something with their degree that's in the field of their degree, Chad? I don't know. I can say this.
I did when I finally finished and figured out what it was I was going to go to school for. I ended up working in that field, but there's a twist. I had absolutely no interest in newspapering. I had none, zero, zip, zilch. The truth of the matter is, I hate to write.
Really?
And so I had absolutely no desire to do that. I wanted to be in radio. That's what I wanted to do. And every decision that I was making, my last couple of years of college, was motivated by radio. That's where, and the part-time jobs that I would seek out. I spent months working for KOEZ, KHCC out of Hutchinson. My on-air time was like 30 seconds a weekend, but I was doing that because that's what I wanted to do. When I left college, the job I got offered was a newspaper gig. And I was like, well, I did do something on the college newspaper, so let's see how this goes. Yeah. And, now we're here.
Yeah, but you say that
30 years later.
Well, and I'll say this. Okay. I'm envious is not the right word, but I have a lot of respect and admiration for you, Chad. I mean, you are the general manager or the chief editor?
I'm the managing editor.
Managing
of the
editor. So you're the top dog for the one here in Newton, Kansas, America, which happens to be the oldest standing paper in the community, and I believe the number one paper in our community.
So even though I said that I hated newspapering and that, it's something I never wanted to do, when I was a student at Bethel, I wrote for 25 cents an inch. That's what I did because I needed beer money. And I'm just telling the truth, right? I needed beer money. I'm like, dude, they'll give me 25 cents an inch. What the heck? I was going to go to the basketball game anyway. And since they were paying by the inch, I made sure there was plenty.
Yeah, I can write a lot for that.
Yeah. And so, I did that. And during that time, one of the things that I did every single day was go over to the library and pick up newspapers. I would read the Wichita Eagle and I would read the Newton Kansan. And throughout the entirety of that time, one of the things that came back to my mind over and over and over again was, if I were ever going to do that, I'll bet Newton would be a fun place to do it in. And so here we are, But I always had my eye, and so then when I got the job offer to start in the newspaper business, the first thing that came across my mind was, how do I get back to Newton? And how do I get into the Kansan store? That was it.
And so then you did.
And it took me a while.
And here you are.
So, yes, I did what was my college major with a twist.
Yeah. And I think that's the way it is for a lot of people. Yep. I think that's the way it is for a lot of people. And speaking of things that are happening at an academic level with a twist, tell me about the Inclusive Playground. I have been watching this. I think I misspoke. I want to clarify because I know and you would know. I read it and then I was like, oh no, I couldn't remember what the number was in my mind's eye, but I thought it was somewhere in the range of like $400,000 to $500,000. Correct, is what they need to raise.
They have a couple of different numbers.
Okay.
Okay. So the baseline is somewhere around 400 G's.
Okay.
The dream is more like 650.
Okay.
This is a project that I was excited about before it ever started.
Yeah.
I mean, that sounds weird, right?
Yeah.
Before anybody said anything, I really wanted to get, and I just didn't know which strings to pull.
Yeah.
I wanted to get something like this for this town. And that's based on an experience that I had while on vacation somewhere else.
Yeah.
So they are now, at least based off of the numbers that were given on Monday, they're somewhere around $106,000 right now.
Wow.
The good news,
wow.
The really good news, the super good news, and I'm not a project shill guy. I'm not going to say give me your money now, but I'm telling you, give them your money now.
Yeah.
Because during this month right here, they've got 2 different donors who have committed $70,000.
Wow.
As a double match. So if we can get $70,000 raised,
that's that's like, yeah, wow.
Straight up, we're just about home free.
Yes.
Yes. It is so huge.
Yeah.
So huge.
Well, and I got to give a shout out, okay? I remember all the way back when I first heard this happen, and I recognized some of your faces, some of the people behind this. I went to high school with you. I was in the same class as Slate Creek Elementary principal, Tanae Alfaro. When I saw them doing what they were doing, I thought, that is so awesome. And I mean, yes. I don't know the word I'm looking for. I would say so awesome. And it has to do with, I'm a big person about trying to find a need and to fill the need, right? We've done things with the skate park in the past. This is what we're about. The people we hang out with are about, is to find a need, fill a need, right? I remember a conversation 3 years ago, how it would be nice if like the Brooks Trade Center does something with the electrician or maybe a building construction. And now we're seeing things happen. And it's like, okay. So Where's the need? Find it, fill it, right? And then to have never, and I got to say it, just never thought about it. And then when I saw it, it was like,
yes,
that is just so,
and it really truly is awesome. And you know, if you've been paying attention, you've heard the story that you know, there were kids that came forward and said, we want to be able to play with our friends on a playground.
Yeah.
And that is really healthy. That's really pure. And that alone is a great reason to get behind this project.
Yeah.
But there's another one. In order for folks to understand the other one, you've got to understand what happened in Wilmer, Minnesota. Okay? I think you might have heard me tell this story before. In Wilmer, Minnesota, it's on the western half of Minnesota, and I mean, there's really nothing around it. It's, I don't know, hour and a half to the Twin Cities. And
I actually lived there.
You lived in Wilmer?
Wilmer for a month and a half. Yeah.
All right. So you know where it's at. Okay.
I stayed there, not lived there, stayed there for almost 2 months in Wilmer, Minnesota, of all places.
All right. So my mother-in-law and father-in-law lived in Wilmer for a few years.
Okay.
And so that was our vacation destination.
Wow.
Okay.
All right. You're awesome.
All right.
Love it.
So I'm in Wilmer, Minnesota, and I don't remember what year it was. It was a few years ago. And I'm grocery shopping because I have access to a kitchen, and I'm just not going to freaking be in McDonald's 3 times a day.
Yeah.
I just not.
Yeah.
So I'm in a grocery store, and I see this guy, and he's got a table all set up, and there's a sign over the top that says "Contribute to our destination playground." I want to say that again. Contribute to our destination playground. Well, I'm like, what the heck is a destination playground?
Right.
I mean, seriously.
Right.
You're telling me you're going to build a playground for kids. It's so cool and so amazing that people are going to drive from everywhere to come just be at the playground.
Right.
Right?
Right.
I mean, seriously.
Yeah. What do you got so good?
Are you kidding me?
What?
So I go over and I talk to the guy, and I mean, I'm really upfront. I'm looking at him going, dude, I don't live here, but I'm real curious.
Yeah.
What the heck is a destination playground? And he looks at me and he goes, you don't live here. I said, no. And he goes, well, then honestly, this is probably not something for you. And then I said, well, I'm the editor of a newspaper, so I'm naturally curious about things, and I want to know, what the heck is a destination playground? He goes, well, where are you from? I said, Kansas. He goes, okay. Are you going to write anything? I'm like, no, I'm not going to write anything. And he goes, okay, so you're not from here. You're not going to write anything. I'm like, seriously, what's a destination playground?
Yeah.
And he looks at me and he does this. He goes, how long are you going to be in town? Well, I'm leaving tomorrow. Okay. It's an inclusive playground. And I said, why don't you just call it an inclusive playground? Because that language isn't going to translate in this community.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So tell me why you want to build this playground. What is it? And he proceeds to describe a playground that is by design a place that children with disabilities can play and be in the same space as children without disabilities.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's cool. And he looks and he's looking at me and he's going, you really think that's cool? I said, yeah, I do. And then I said, what is to you the most important piece of this playground? One piece of equipment. What's the most important one? And he said, if we can afford it, we're going to have at-grade merry-go-rounds. Well, at-grade merry-go-rounds? He goes, yes. All of the machinery is sunk into the ground.
Yeah.
You're going to be able to roll a wheelchair onto this thing, and there'll be a space for a kid in a wheelchair, and it's going to be just a regular old merry-go-round that people can just run like crazy.
Yeah.
And kids in wheelchairs will be able to experience a merry-go-round. And I went, holy shnikes.
Right.
And he starts laughing. And I said, so how much is it going to cost to be built? And I don't remember what number he gave me, but it was big.
Yeah.
And Wilmer's 20,000 people. Sound familiar?
It's really, yeah, I know. Yeah.
Sound familiar?
When you said that type of terminology wouldn't fly, that's
right. And it wasn't that he thought it was going to sink him politically. It's just that he didn't think people would understand it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, okay, good for you. So he launches this destination playground. So I circle back around and I asked him, why are you calling it a destination playground? And he said, because I am convinced they'll come from everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's why we're not building it on school property. That's the only difference in this project, these two projects. We're going to build it at Robbins Island, which is their big park. Mm-hmm. Okay, so this would be the equivalent for us
of like athletic,
of putting it in an athletic park.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
My brain immediately went, when I started thinking Newton, man, how good would this be in Centennial Park? So he said, okay, that's my thought. I looked at him and I said, I'm not convinced that there is such a thing as a destination playground.
Yeah.
Your plan is way cool, but I'm just not convinced that we're looking at a destination playground. I asked him then, when do you anticipate construction beginning? When do you anticipate it being done? And he told me that they were going to spend about 3 more months doing the fundraising, and whatever they were going to be able to build, they were going to build.
Yeah.
And they were going to use all volunteer labor to build it in order to keep costs down. And he was hopeful that they would have it done in a year. At that point, I was like, I'll see you in a year. We went back for the vacation right at a year later, and we went and drove out to Robbins Island. It wasn't opened yet, but there was enough of it done that my kids, who at that time were all under 10 years old, were looking at the fence and going, Dad, I know it's not done, but man, can I?
Right.
No. They were so anxious. They wanted it so bad.
Yeah.
Okay. So we've got hayseeds from Kansas up in 700 miles away going, yes, I want to play here. We went back a year later and it was open. And here's the important part of this. And this is why we need to be so incredibly excited about what they're trying to do at Slate Creek, because I really believe the same thing's going to happen. We went back a year later. School was not out yet. And because school was not out yet, I was like, we're going to take a day. We're going to go over to this playground. We're going to go have some fun, man. Yeah. They've got to be done. And we drove out there, and it's a school day, and it was packed. And all the school buses from all across the state for the field trips were lined up.
Yeah.
And we've gone back there in the summer, and you can look at the plates on the cars. They're not from Candioi County.
Yeah.
I mean, they are. But there's a lot that aren't.
All people, because otherwise there's not a place for that
to be. It's grandma and grandpa from who knows where that are like, you know what, today with these kids, let's try something new and different.
Yeah.
By the way, it's free. We're just going to drive down to Wilmer.
Yeah.
It's a destination. It absolutely is. I was wrong. He was right.
Yeah.
And I truly believe that is one of the reasons we need to be so incredibly excited about the All Together Now campaign.
Yeah.
Because it is so much more, and it can mean so much more to this community than having a park, school playground where special ed kids can play alongside their classmates.
Yeah.
That alone is huge, but it's really more than that.
Yeah. Well, and it's all about community.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, once again, I take it back to how awesome it is, because, you know, at first thought, if it's not in your view, it's one of those things that if it's not in your peripheral view and you have not experienced a situation where you have a child or a significant other or a loved one who just can't participate because, well, things aren't built like that.
Right.
And
we don't have it.
When we do that and that forward thinking takes place and it's visionary. And I mean, I even think about people who maybe have mobility issues because of their age, and then what they can do at a park like that, with their grandkids, or that they wouldn't be able to do, at one that was different.
Right.
So here's your thing. I want you to tell everybody, Chad, what you just told them before about how they need to get out and they need to contact whoever for whatever, for however, so that way they can have a part in making sure that they're able to help out with this match funding at this time.
Yeah, well, you just gotta make the donation now.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the end of it right there. They've got a website. It's I think it's Altogether Newton.
Yep. Altogether.newton.org. We should know this.
It's okay.
Just look up Altogether Newton.
We live in the world of Google, right?
Yes.
So they got a website, Altogether Newton, and they will be glad to take your money. And by the way, they're probably not a participant, but because they're now tied into the community foundation, they are going to be a participant. Giving Tuesday is coming quick.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know what other excuses you need.
Yeah.
Okay? Yeah. I really don't. The truth of the matter is this playground is not going to get built if we rely on K through 5 kids to bring their quarters. Yeah. And that's been the basis of the launch.
Yeah, yeah.
That's where it all started. There's been some other stuff that's come down through the pipe with Joanna and her group, Small and Mighty group.
Yeah.
Because there's only about 4 people on the fundraising committee.
Another rock star went to high school with.
Yeah.
Man, Heston kicks out some rock stars. 2,000 graduates there, boy, I tell you.
Yeah. So I'm just, while they're all together, I'm all in on this particular project. And I'll be honest, one of the reasons I'm all in is what I experienced in another community 700 miles away from here.
And not a play on words, okay, but to move on a little bit, I was wanting to talk about everybody being together in one action and initiative. And I know we have to put this to rest, Chad, but you wrote an article. I don't know if it was you or Kansan staff, but it had to do with the, I guess the decision by the Harvey County Commission, and then we're going to use the words ban both solar and wind energy in the community. And I know we've both expressed our opinions on that, but just to clarify, what has now taken place is, and take your opinions about it or whatever the case may be, but there was a large group of people that were, and I don't even know if I'd call it a large group of people, but there was a group of people that were effective in continuously showing up to the meetings, stating their voices. I remember at one point in time, I think there was something that Randy had asked, one commissioner asked another commissioner, where's the people at that are for this? So if we want to call it, committees in action or whatever the case may be, but I don't really have much mixed feelings. I just think it's completely inappropriate to ban something entirely. But for what it's worth,
there's a lot
give it to me, Chad.
There's a lot to unpack. So let's start with what the Planning and Zoning Board recommended and was approved. And so it's not an out and out ban. What it is a ban of commercial projects. Large projects.
Okay.
All right. So if I were to win the lottery this afternoon and I'd go buy my 40 acres and decide that I wanted to build a house on it and I wanted that to be solar powered or wind powered, I could do that. I can't sell any of the power or energy that I generate really to anybody. But for private use, I can go do that. I cannot take that same 40 acres and call up Butler Rural Electric and tell them, hey, you want to lease my ground for a solar project?
Yeah.
Because that would be well outside any of the permissible limits under the rules. Okay?
Okay.
So it's not just a flat out ban, nobody can do this.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
What they did is limited it to private residential or even private business use. that's not sold to a third party. I have lots and lots and lots of mixed emotion from this thing because it's been going for, 3 years?
Yeah.
It ain't over.
No.
Okay. I appreciate Don Schrader and the comments that he made on Tuesday to that effect, in that it's not over because, number one, the state legislature can swoop in and debate these things at any time, and they can decide to do something at any time. And nobody even knows what they might do.
Yeah.
Whether that's to put all the power in the hands of the KCC or to take it upon themselves. We just don't know. So at that level, it's not over. And quite honestly, even here in Harvey County, it's not over. Because last time I was on, I sang the praises of Justin Stuckey. And Justin Stuckey has been saying for I don't know how long, these are living documents. These can be changed again. Yeah. And business interests go where their demands are. Yeah. And where they think they can make money. And so if they think they can make money here in Harvey County, they will be back and they will be asking, what can we do about this? Yeah. And the Planning and Zoning Board will then have to take it up again. Okay? I mean, these are simple truths.
So goes the government. So goes the government.
Yeah. So there's that piece to unpack. Here's the other part to unpack, which you hinted around at. And again, I'm going to point back to a month ago when I was here, and I made the statement: we're dealing with people who were smart enough to show up and be there.
Yeah.
And that's really key because, I can't literally jump into the heads of people like Randy Haig. I just can't. But he made a comment that basically said, I changed my vote, and the reason I'm changing my vote, the people who support this thing, they're not here today. They weren't there. They weren't at any of the planning and zoning meetings for months.
I got a question.
They weren't there. He had received texts and emails, but when the rubber meets the road is when the meetings happen.
Yeah. But I do have a question about this, and this kind of stuff doesn't bother me. I suppose when somebody asks me why I wasn't more vocal about it, other than my program, because it has been talked about, I've told them that I'm speaking from the mind of someone who's watching from a 10,000-foot view and how our government is operating and why. Okay, so I don't think it's a good scenario or a situation in which you get a posse together and everybody watches the theatrics, the throwing your camera up in the commissioner's face and being rude and disrespectful, and then you have a mob and a mob mentality and people glare at you. And okay, for all this, I've been here, done this. This is no big deal for me. I actually embellish it and relish it, to be honest, for those that think that it bothers me. But I don't like the fact that if you get 20 to 30 people rallied up together about something, that all you have to do is consistently browbeat, intimidate, and try to make this situation one that people do not feel is an area, or like I got to go feel the threat of anger and violence, right, to participate in this process, which I guess we put our big boy or big girl or big people pants on, and then we decide we're going to go and brave it. But I also would like to fault the commission, and I've done this before. If we're elected officials that are supposed to be elected to make decisions that are best for the whole, we should not, even in our society, be able to have the wind of the whim of those elected officials based upon showing up to their house and knocking on their door, or standing outside of a Supreme Court justice's house screaming, "You're a baby killer," or it's getting to the point where that type of behavior seems to be the most effective way to persuade a government agency, in my opinion, especially locally. And it's problematic given the fact that People just don't want to be a part of that. Like they'll send an email, but they're not going to show up to have the red shirts against them. I mean, it's really like and then to know this, a lot of the people that were consistently there at those meetings, this was not just a local issue. You maybe had a quarter, half of those people that had any skin in the game, and I don't have any skin in the game, right? I don't have any land. I'm not a landowner that's trying to put solar panels on my property or windmills, and you're cutting me out of my money and you're stifling my economic development. And you have cattle and pigs and horses. Why can't I have a solar farm? Where's the hypocrisy in all this? They're not going to show up and face the red shirts. It's what do you think about that? To me, that seems like a breakdown in how it works. Maybe some people think that's the way it's supposed to work, but I just have a problem with that.
To some extent, I agree with you. To some extent, I agree that far too often, when an issue arises, the sway goes to the most vocal.
Yeah.
But in this particular situation, where I have been sitting for quite a while, is we had a 9-member board of community members that were in charge of cussing and discussing this thing.
Yeah.
And dealing with it and creating the policies. And I don't know how much they faced. I do know that there are folks that were showing up at every single one of those meetings.
Mm-hmm.
Whether they spoke out or not, they were there.
Probably calling them on the phone, sending them emails, bombard.
And all that stuff is going to go on. But we had 9 members. We had that entire board that was dealing with that. And the reason that's important to me is the county commission delegates that authority, and quite honestly, they delegate that authority off to that board.
Mm-hmm.
So when they have taken their time and done their work, and in this case, we're now on year 3, and they unanimously approve something and hand it to you and say, we recommend that you make this the rules and the law of our land. And you as a commissioner, number one, actively delegated that to them.
Yeah.
Quite honestly, you just need to respect that and
move on.
Away we go.
Yeah, it comes down to interesting things. Like, we can tie this into elections in the beginning. What we were talking about is, yes, that's fresh on me. I think that wasn't the correct decision. But, hey, like you said, you made a case that is true. I mean, these people are appointed to make these decisions.
Yes.
This all went through the correct pathway. Even though I don't necessarily like some of the things that were happening on the peripheral, there was nothing unethical or wrong with what took place. It's what
correct
was supposed to take place. And it is true, and it's concluding this, because right now, yeah, there's no point in beating a dead horse on our opinions over the fact. It is what it is. I mean, decisions were made, just like elections. People elected who they wanted to elect, and we just continue to move on as though it's a new year. Happy New Year, Chad. That's how I feel about it.
Yeah.
When it comes to elections and
well, and I do. Quite honestly, after Tuesday, after I was done Tuesday, I did honestly breathe just a sigh of relief, because it was time for all of us to take a collective breath on this.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say put it to bed, because it's not.
Yeah.
It's not over. And honestly, it never will be.
Yeah.
But we needed a pause, and we now have it. And straight up, those folks on the planning and zoning board, they need a break.
Yeah.
I mean, they really do.
Does it seem to you? I mean, I've also been in a vein, right, where we're dealing with policy and policy making and whatnot. So of course nobody's happy. You wouldn't believe the amount of people that have contacted me about the ban of smoking in public parks. Okay, and just how that's taking it back to the ban in public places and all this. It's like, well,
I'm going to make a political statement here.
Okay.
I very rarely do this. If you're still smoking in 2023 with all we know about tobacco, you're a freaking idiot. Okay? Seriously. And to every juvenile in Harvey County,
yeah,
if you're vaping, you're an idiot.
Well, I mean, yeah, I'll say this. You know, when it comes down to what they did and how they did it, you know, it's just like I tell people, well, there's nothing, there's no criminal element to this.
That is correct.
What it really comes down to, and
it is strictly a voluntary compliance situation.
Yeah, and I'm going to ask Sissy about this next week when she comes on the program, because I don't know. I mean, I'm interested, but you know, I'm really supportive of drug-free youth in Harvey County. Stand the whole thing. There are things that I've been like, well, let's try that. Let's see if that works. You know, there's some things that I see as like, oh man, I wish they would take this approach or do this. But the truth is I just said it in a meeting. Well, you were there. There was one here again. I missed it for a reason or another. But you know, they're doing everything they can to try to decrease usage of substances of those who are youth. You know, the statistics are behind it. I would never encourage anybody to go do that. I don't think there's anybody that would encourage anybody to go and be dependent upon a substance, especially today, like you said, with everything we know about it. And I understand the encouragement and the action behind it. It's just setting a standard in our community that when we're in public places, we want to be smoke free. Nobody's going to criminalize you for it. But we would ask you that you go somewhere else to smoke. And I would have liked them to have designated smoking areas, but
well,
you know, there is that
so
too.
There's lots to unpack again, but you know, DeFi really wasn't involved in this.
That's why you're here.
Right?
Yeah.
Make no mistake, they're on the sidelines and they're giving their applause.
Yeah.
But that's pretty much the only involvement they had with this particular thing. This came from Healthy Harvey and the Harvey County Health Department. Yeah. Their job is public health.
Yeah.
That is their job. Period. End of story. That's what it is. And you know, they had the I want to say National Honor Society, but that doesn't ring right in my brain. They had a group of high school students that went and picked up tobacco litter in a park. In less than an hour, they filled a 2-gallon waste can with cigarette butts. I mean, think about that.
Yeah.
Less than an hour. So they weren't walking too far to go get these.
Yeah.
All right. From a litter alone perspective, how do we not respond to getting rid of a problem?
Yeah.
And then when you look at, let's look at some budgetary concerns. What budgetary concerns might there be? Well, all the signage is going to be provided free of charge from KDHE. Well, we're going to have to pay somebody to put those signs up. And then let's look at where they're going to be put up. They're going to be put up around playgrounds.
Yeah.
Okay? Dude, I'm a parent. I don't care how close a friend someone might be to me. I don't want you smoking around my kids. Well, period.
And I'll tell you, Chad, this is something that I always did because, you know, if I was going to smoke, especially at a park, it was to go remove myself, walk way over from where nobody was and do the deed, right?
Sure.
But there is no way to control that somebody will just be sitting right there, just light it up while they're pushing their kid on the swing and then demand that you should allow them to do that. So that goes back to one of these things again, which is a back and forth. And if you look at it in an apolitical way, you kind of ask, well, is that such a bad thing? I mean, is it a bad thing to request that our parks are smoke free?
No, it is not.
You know, I don't
no,
know
it is
anybody
not.
too. And I'll tell you this, I don't know anybody that's smoking today, anybody that would have a cigarette in their mouth today. You walk up and you go ask them, hey, do you enjoy smoking? If you could take it all back, would you have ever smoked? None of them would be like, oh yeah, I am so excited that I made a decision to do this. And now here I am. And then you ask that same person, if you could figure out a way to tell the youth, you know, like what would you tell somebody that's 13 or 14 years old when you started smoking of any substance, whatever? They wouldn't tell you, good job. Yes, it's time for you to take a dip and chew, or it's time for you to get those lungs good and blackened up for the next 40 years of smoking. Nobody.
You want to know what I told a teenager yesterday? Here's what I told him. I looked right at him and I said, you got to get away from it. You got to. And I'm going to tell you straight up from experience, you got to get away from it. In college, I was a dipstick. I really was. And when I decided to give some tobacco a try, I didn't mess around. I went straight to the Camel non-filters.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Some lucky strikes.
Yeah. I ain't messing around. If I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it right? And, you know, when I was like, wonder what weed is like. I didn't mess around. I rolled my own.
Oh, gosh, okay. Chad, we're talking about weed now.
Yeah, no, I mean, seriously. This is exactly what came out of my mouth yesterday. Yeah. And, you know, when I decided, number one, tobacco, I was like, dude, I'm just not going to cough my way through my life. It's not going to happen. And then with weed, it's like, man, that's like $40. I can't afford that. So I'm done.
Yeah.
That was 30 years ago. And I still feel the effects from that. I still feel them.
Well, you can't ever take back what you choose to do. That's right.
I will never, ever run a 5-minute mile again. And I can chase that dream as much as I want. And I have been chasing that dream for decades. I will never do it again. I couldn't do it in my late 20s. I had gone through my dipstickery, and it destroyed any and all hope of me doing that. And now here I am. I'm in my early 50s, and I sit there and go, I still feel that. How stupid was that?
Well, and I say this, we're going somewhere here, Chad. We're going somewhere. I know we're getting way into the weeds, but on a real personal level, I agree with you 100%. I believe that every choice that we make throughout our life is just adding to the overall whole. And when you make poor choices, you have to live with those the rest of your life. There is consequences for choices. You can't unchoose a choice. It just doesn't happen. You can't make some action not go away. There's a reaction and another reaction and so on. So going back to DFY, going back to the smoke in the parks, our own personal life experience, you and what you do, especially being right there on the front lines with children who are choosing to make decisions that are not going to benefit them the rest of life. Me having a personal life experience of being a child who has made decisions that were not beneficial to me for the rest of my life. Stress the importance. I think we all as adults want to see the future, our kids, whether they're our children or children as a whole, to be better than what we are, to have not made the same mistakes that we made. I mean, that's the whole point with parenting, right? And as a community, it takes a community to raise children. So as a community, what do we want as the future for our children? And that's something I think about all the time. And it's resonating with me, what you're saying, because, well, here I am too, Chad. How can we, or do we do our best, both individually, as a team, and as a community, to help make and provide a better future for our children that are not going to make the same mistakes, whether it be a community level or personal level or whatever. You know, it's like going back to the Railway Way and all the stuff that happened with that. I hope that in the future we don't make those same decisions. I hope that it was enough of a consequence, that there was enough stuff that we saw come out of that, where we just won't make that decision going forward as a community?
Well, when we're talking, if we are going to talk specifically about tobacco, marijuana, those types of decisions, there's a number of things that we have to come to grips with and embrace. Okay, number one, and there's a whole host of issues out there that we have to come to grips and embrace this fact with. When we're dealing with teenagers, when we're dealing with preteens, when we're dealing with children, and make no mistake, anybody under the age of 18 is considered a child, legally. When we're dealing with children, we are dealing with individuals who, because their brain has not developed it, do not have a full sense of right and wrong.
Yeah.
And they're not going to get that until they're in their 20s.
Long-term consequences.
Okay? So we have to, you got to understand that. Because when we're dealing with these issues, it's not about blame.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So if I'm late picking my kid up after school or a wrestling practice or whatever it is, and they've started walking home and they're with somebody else, and they're walking together, and I pull up and I see somebody throw a cig on the ground, that's not going to be about assigning any blame.
Yeah.
We have to teach, because we have to develop their sense of right and wrong. That's what it is. We have to absolutely get to a point where we start understanding that.
Yeah. Community is key.
You
too.
mentioned
community is key.
Yes, community is. You mentioned the Railer Way. That's the true mission of that document.
Yeah.
The true mission of that document is not about assigning blame.
Yeah.
That's not what it's about. Do they need to stand for consequences for their actions? Yes, absolutely they do. That's how we teach.
Yeah. And we establish a culture. We're establishing a culture to say what we want. If there's no expectation, then there's no desire to meet expectation.
Right. Teen Intervene,
Yeah.
that whole program, it's not about assigning blame. It's not 10 weeks of somebody sitting across from a teenager and say, look how stupid you are.
Yeah.
That's not what it's about. It's about teaching them, because they understand, the folks who created that, understand that simple concept. These kids do not have that sense.
Yeah.
It's not there. It's not going to be there. These are developmental concepts. The scientific fact that the part of your brain that handles that thought process is not fully developed at that age. So it's not about blame.
Yeah.
It's about teach. And we need to, as a community, we need to take that attitude. That's what it's about. How do we teach it? Well, they do have to stand for a consequence. They're never going to learn anything unless
There's correction of some kind.
there's a correction action. Yes. There's a situation going on in the middle school with the 7th grade. I have a child in that grade as well. And there's a bunch of kids that absolutely need to start standing the consequence of the actions that they're taking. They continually do the same thing over and over and over and over and over again. And no one is standing in and saying, this is the consequence of that action. And until someone does that, I don't see a resolution to the issue. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
Until there's a consequence, I just don't see it. And it's not about juvenile intake workers sitting down with a kid and it's preaching the fire and brimstone and saying, I'm going to stick you in a deep, dark hole and you're not coming home tonight.
Right.
That's not what it's about. It's about that kid walking into that intake room and the intake worker saying, this is why you're here. You've been doing this. You keep doing this. Next time around, I mean, I don't know if I can save you.
Yeah.
And the only thing that can save you is a change in your behavior. What you're doing is wrong.
Yeah.
And you need to learn what you're doing is wrong.
Yeah.
That's where we need to be.
Yeah. And that's our kids are so important. Our kids are so important for so many reasons on so many levels. You got them in the school system. I got them in the school system. We're part of our community. We want our community to be better for them. We want a future for our children in this community. That's what we were talking about earlier. We are coming to the end of the program, Chad. And as always, I'll give you the last word to speak directly to the hearts and minds of everybody listening right now. Chad, what do you got for them?
I really don't know. You know, I mean, I didn't walk in with an agenda today, and I mean, we just kind of sat. Well, what are we going to talk about? But I think that's just because it's been such an intense period, and we're getting ready to enter one of the most intense parts of our calendar year.
Yeah.
There are two extremely intense time periods in our calendar year. One is right now. And it's because of Christmas and because everybody wants to get their stuff done right before Christmas. Okay? So if I got a word, it's like, dude, just take a break, slow down, breathe, relax. If it ain't perfect, so what? And the other time period is May, because everybody's trying to get everything in before graduation. And so we have these parts of our calendar where we collectively need to just I feel like at the county, for sure, there needs to be because there's just been this steady parade. Board of Ed's entering one of those periods where they're going to be able to slow down, maybe, unless somebody stirs something up again. But that's just kind of where we're at.
So Chad's words for this week are take a chill pill.
Yeah, it's time. It's time to take a pill.
Well, folks, there you have it. And thanks for listening to this episode of Harvey County Talk. Chad Frey, managing editor of the Kansan, is our guest this week, as he is every month, and maybe more than that coming up. But always good to talk to you, Chad. Have a wonderful week, and have a wonderful week, everybody.
Thanks.